Yo people, imagine creating a monster in 1 hour, then creating a monster in 100 hours. Now you would think that the 100 hours monster will be the best one, but you may be wrong.
This video I'm gonna challenge myself to create a monster animation in Blender in 1 hour, and then 10 hours, and then finally 100 hours. And I think it ended up being closer to 50 hours, but it sounded better.
The dedication.
So I started the 1 hour challenge with very low
Amazing
expectations,
talent.
because a time constraint as tight as this one really puts a lot of limitations on the creative process. So yeah, let's see how that goes. First thing I did was delete the default cube and bring in a new one for good luck. Then I went into edit mode and started extruding this cube to form a basic humanoid shape to sculpt on. And since hands are quite difficult to get right, I cut down on the time by having only 3 fingers. I thought that was pretty smart. Then I gave him a subdivision surface modifier and went straight to sculpting. I spent roughly 10 minutes.
I know this might be looking like, oh, this is so easy to create, but I promise you
This creature that was heavily inspired by Stranger Things, like the Demogorgon, and then added in a second cube to make the
Oh,
teeth.
watch
I used
that,
a
that's so
mirror modifier
boring.
and started placing these teeth around the mouth, and then it was time to get some textures onto him. Using the ambient occlusion node let me make this color variation for the crevices, and then I took the safe route and made him glossy and used a noise texture for some bumps in the skin. Adding in a basic armature and using the auto weight option made him poseable, and then I just started working on a simple animation. This shows why it's really important to put some effort into creating a nice rig with inverse kinematics, because animating without it it's just painful.
Wow. No. Now, this is 1 hour. It is created in 1 hour. Oh my god, imagine the 100 hour one.
Not my proudest work, but at least we got something in
What do you mean? I
55
love it.
minutes. So that's good.
I
For
love
the
it.
second monster though, we have significantly more time. In 10 hours you can really afford to put some more thought into the concept for the scene. But the problem is that there's no time to backtrack if you make any mistakes or want to change anything, so I just had to sort of go for it. Off with just sculpting this blob of clay into some interesting shapes to get ideas for the monster design. I was pretty happy with this shape right here, so I added in a cube and fit it to the shape to create a cleaner mesh to add details to. Because we have nice clean geometry, we can use the multi-resolution modifier to sculpt on different levels of detail. This has been a great update to my creature workflow, and it keeps everything neatly organized and running smooth in the viewport. After refining the shapes like this, I created my own set of
What
skin
the
brushes
hell
and
is
used
going
those
on
to
right
paint
now?
on some texture. And this is honestly my favorite part of sculpting, because it adds so much detail with quite little effort. And yeah, it's sort of
I would
brings the
hate
sculpt
to
alive.
do this. I would hate.
to speed up the rendering
I'd
later,
hate
and
it.
experimented with some different shaders to get a nice fleshy look. Then I went on to create a simple armature rig, and I remembered my lesson from the previous monster and added in some IK constraints. And here I had the idea to experiment with a simpler version of the muscle simulation that you see on modern creature effects. So I created these muscle objects and gave it a cloth sim. Then with weight paint I could select which parts of the monster should be deformed by it, and then I connected it with the surface deform modifier. You can see the results were not perfect, but I think it adds a little bit to the realism of the movement, and this is definitely something that's worth experimenting with more in the future. I wanted to put this monster in a forest at night, so I thought it would be a cool idea to have some moss growing on his back, so he kind of blends into the environment before the reveal. Then I animated this simple animation by hand and started blocking out the environment around this. I scattered some rocks and grass and then animated a simple handheld camera movement. After rendering out the sequence and adding some post-processing effects, this was the final result for the 10-hour monster.
What the hell, bro? Like what? No, hold up. He did that in 10 hours. Oh my god, now imagine the 100-hour monster. I am excited. No.
Thing somewhere, but still it's not very polished. So let's continue
Ha!
with the 100-hour monster, or more like the unlimited time constraint monster video part challenge.
100
It's not
hours
really a challenge,
is
though, it's just
for
me creating a
48.
monster effect. So let's get started. I
4
spent
days?
a lot more time getting the anatomy
4
to
days?
look more realistic, and
Okay.
also put
5
some
days?
more effort into the small
Oh.
details on the face and hands, for example. I made these blind looking eyes and baked all of the small scale details onto normal maps. And I also had a lot more time to put some effort into the texturing and experiment with the subsurface scattering to get a real nice skin effect. To add some blood around the mouth and on the body, I texture painted a black and white mask using different blood textures I found online, and then I used that mask to blend in a blood material. I exported the final monster as an FBX file and let Mixamo handle the rigging, and as you can see, it worked pretty good. I wanted to create sort of like a short film sequence using this monster, and I had this idea of like special forces soldiers hunting it through the woods at night, sort of like that one Love, Death and Robots episode, but in a modern setting almost. To be able to have some interaction between the monster and the people in the scene, I made this rough 3D scan of myself in the costume using Meshroom. So I placed my hand on these tripods to stay still in a T-pose.
The
and
effort
had
is
my brother
amazing.
grab a video just walking around in a circle around me. Then I converted that video into a image sequence in Blender and loaded it all into the photogrammetry software.
Bro.
And it actually handled it pretty well considering how quick the setup was. Unfortunately, I couldn't use the gas mask during filming because it was like fogging up, so I couldn't see where I was walking, which was a big issue. So I had to do some manual cleanup on the 3D scan to remove the gas mask and add in the balaclava, or like the face cover, instead. Since we've already established that creature animation isn't really my strongest skill in Blender,
Really?
I used my Rococo motion
Really?
capture suit to capture all of the animation.
I would
needed.
differ.
This actually
Sorry, I'm in a
outputs a
word.
surprisingly clean animation, and then you can do some cleanup or layer changes.
I would
on top of
disagree.
it using the Blender.
I would
NLA
disagree.
editor. It's a little bit tricky to learn, but it's a lifesaver when working with mocap data. I used the software Cascador to create the ragdoll animations, and I spent more time than I'd like to admit just playing around with the ragdoll simulation. It's just something about it that's so interesting. Maybe that's... I use this AI software called Switchlight
Oh,
Studio
AI.
to extract a rough estimate of
Of
the
course,
lighting conditions
AI.
from just
Everything
a
is
single
AI
image. I
nowadays.
have no idea how this works, but it sort of outputs an HCRI that matches the scene, sort of. And it works pretty good. And then I brought that into my scene as an environment texture. This basically makes it so that any 3D objects I render can be seamlessly placed into the footage, and the lighting matches pretty good actually. Because my shots were pretty static, I didn't really need to do much 3D tracking. It worked pretty good to just line up the 3D camera by eye and then 2D track that render into the footage in post. And after a ton of compositing work, both adding in the monster into the scenes and also doing these clone
Right.
shots, this was the final result.
Okay. Looks like a movie? The animation of it. I don't know.
Thank you so much for...
I'm not gonna lie, I'm not trying to sound mean or anything, but I think I prefer the 10-hour monster. I don't know, it looked more realistic for me.